Well, hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Below the Rim show, trying to tackle as best we can British basketball as a whole. I'll introduce the lads first. They're there, as we can see. Ads, my man, how you doing?
Good. Pleasure to be here, as always.
And Josh, my man, how's it going?
It's going well. Just back to work on June 1st. Looking forward to it.
Better work than not work, though.
Yeah.
Or not, I don't know. And a very special guest, BBL's head of comms, Selina Conroy. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for inviting me on.
Well, we'll kick things straight off. I'll start with an easy question, potentially. We'll see how it unfolds. But first of all, with the way things are, obviously the troubled times we're in, how, first of all, is the BBL holding up? Because obviously there's people there that work with the BBL. You've obviously got employees. How's everybody doing, first up?
We're doing okay. We're doing okay. So as it stands, we're currently furloughed. So we've got within sort of like the head offices, you've got myself and my team, comms team, and we've got the events team as well. So we're all furloughed at the moment, but we're having like regular catch-ups, checking in with each other, and yeah, we're doing okay. We're doing okay. I could do without the homeschooling part, though. So, Josh, my respect for you for doing it as a regular.
We wanted to get you on because our last show we looked at the Hoops Fix podcast that went out and recent reports that the BBL was close to liquidation. Is there anything you can say on that at all?
Not so much at the moment. Obviously there's been lots of work going on behind the scenes. We updated a few weeks ago on that. All the clubs have been working together, looking at ways that we can continue get back to playing, because that's what we all want to do. That's what we all want. So hopefully over the next couple of weeks we should be in a position where we can kind of share another update on where we're at. But yeah, there's been a lot of work going into making sure that we can get back to playing as soon as possible.
Absolutely, we look forward to that when it comes along. Definitely. Ads, let's go to you first. I know you've got some questions.
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's nice to cyber meet you, Selina. Thank you for joining us. It's like you were saying before, that this is actually, even though we're in a bad time, it's kind of been a good time in terms of content, because everybody's sort of taken a bull by the horns and tried to keep content going for the fans, because everyone's so desperate for the season to get back underway. And it must be a lot. Are you feeling a lot of pressure at the moment at the BBL because people are constantly going, let's get back to it? Or the craziest one I've heard is let's finish last season and then start next season straight away. So I mean, you must be getting some pretty hard questions coming your way right now.
I mean, no harder than usual, to be honest. I think that there's obviously people are going to have loads of different opinions and thoughts about what we should be doing, what we shouldn't be doing. People will have, anything we do, they'll think that they've got a better solution. All we can do is just, carry on working to work out the best solution for all of the clubs, and that include, the coaches, the players, the volunteers who help out on game nights, everyone involved. It's making sure that we do the best by them, really, and the fans as well, obviously. So people have their opinions.
Yeah, well, it's that thing, isn't it? You're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't, because whatever decisions are made, people are going to disagree with it, and there's always going to be the prattling online from people talking, oh no, they should do this, they shouldn't do that. So I mean, it's like any business right now. The pressure on you guys to sort of go, right, what I mean, I wouldn't be afraid if I was on the BBL panel. I'd be the one going, hey, we don't know. You know what I mean? We're at the mercy of a lot of other people as well. And obviously, first and foremost, is keeping the fans, players, and everybody else safe. So, if they set any sort of deadlines as to we're going to make some sort of announcement by then, or are you just literally having to play it by ear?
we're sort of at the moment, as I say, sort of within the next couple of weeks, we're hoping to be in a position to make a statement. As I say, it's just been a case of playing it by ear, because things have changed and moved so fast and continue to, that we could come up with like the best plan that works for today, but then by next week it could all change. So we're sort of working on the basis that we're working with all of the current guidance, which we've done throughout. And yeah, it's just making sure that, as I say, we're in the most stable position we can be at the time, to move everything forward. And as I say, get back on the court, get back to playing, because I mean, I only started with BBL at the beginning of February. And already I'm just kind of like, I miss it. I want to get back. I want to, you know, I want to get back. I want to, before all of this happened, I was zipping up and down the country, going to meet all of the clubs. And I want that to get back and get happening. So, but yeah, it's a case of when we can say something, we will, and not really wanting to promise anything before if we then can't deliver on it.
Sure. No, it makes perfect sense. And I mean, I'm guessing that you're probably having to work closely with Basketball England as well, so that everybody's kind of in line, you know, sending out the same message. Yeah,
so there's weekly calls with Basketball England, Basketball Scotland, Wales as well. So we're all everyone's all working together to make sure that we're all doing the best we can for the basketball community as a whole.
Good stuff. Josh, my man.
Selina, the question I want to ask you is that, you know, the BBL right now, what its biggest aim right now is to try and find that TV deal that it had in the 90s that made it such a great commercial product for sports in the UK. And a lot of other professional leagues, you know, for example, Germany, it's got the Bundesliga. In Israel, they got the Winter League. In Australia, they got the NBL. And I'm pretty sure that all these leagues will resume. I think, you know, Israel is going to resume on June the 20th. I'm not sure when the Bundesliga is going to resume, but they're going to have a no-fan policy for the safety of the players, obviously to prevent the spread of online. The BBL, and this is just my assumption, really depends on the intake of fans coming in at the gate and sort of making that revenue on game, because, like I said, we don't have these sort of TV deals that they have in other big countries. Do you see that as a potential option, that the BBL could resume with no fans going, or is that going to be, in your opinion, do you think that might be a bit of an expense on the clubs to run?
I think from my own perspective, I don't see that would be an option that would be open. As you say, sort of the income from fans coming along to the games is huge and pivotal for many of the clubs. If we did have sort of a deal in place, would we be looking at it? I don't know. It's I think it will be interesting to see what happens in other countries when they go back to playing, and how that works. I think obviously it's different in each of the different countries, and sort of that they're at different stages of dealing with this than we are. But it'll be interesting to see what happens. I know I watched Bundesliga football last weekend, and it was odd. It was really weird. Like, on the one hand, it was good to see some football, and then on the other hand, it was just like it just felt a bit wrong in a way. So, but yeah, I think from my viewpoint, I don't see that we'd be back playing without fans, to be honest.
I mean, the thing with that as well is that the clubs have still got to pay the salaries. So if they're hosting games with no fans, how are they going to pay the players' salaries? So, you know, personally, I'd just rather wait until people can get back into their arenas to watch the team. Like you say, I caught a couple of bits of sports behind closed doors, and it's just got that eerie weirdness where if there's a goal, you can actually hear the players and the bench shouting, but then it's like there's just no one there. But football can obviously continue to pay the players the money that they get. but unfortunately the BBL just doesn't offer that. So personally, I'd rather just sit it out.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note as well that even sports as rich as football are suffering from not having fans in. It's going to impact on them as well. And I think if you look at certainly like lower league clubs, they're really they're kind of almost in the same position as BBL in that game day revenue is so crucial to their survival, that even they're at the point where it's kind of like, well, you know, if they did go back to play, it probably wouldn't have been viable. So it affects more sports than just basketball. So
in your, I know you said it changes kind of almost daily, how you're going to tackle, how you're going to come back, and things like that. Is it talked about whether or not you're going to kind of have some kind of closure to this season, or is this season just done and we're going to look to the next one?
I know it's being discussed as part of the how we make a comeback. I know it's being discussed. I don't think there's any sort of set resolution yet that we can share. But as I say, in the next couple of weeks, we should be in a position to share the decisions made by that, because that's something that obviously all the clubs have got to agree on and decide on. So lots of conversations happening.
I mean, the obvious one with that, Pabz, is that I think we said it on another show. If you were to carry on this season, I think it just gets messy for the league and for the clubs, because essentially you're saying, right, we're going to pick up where we left off. But I think it'd be pretty much impossible to do that fairly with the same rosters. And I think if you're going to finish out a season, surely you'd have to do it with the players that were, you know, the predominantly the main
I agree.
players from each team.
I think the sensible thing is to stick a pin in it, and that's it. We'll just look forward. But I was interested just to know if that is something you're still discussing, or if that's kind of that's it, done.
Yeah, I mean, it obviously we're sort of advanced stages, and I think it's a case of sort of working out the finer detail of it all. And yeah, as I say, there's sort of the next meeting with the clubs where sort of all the final decisions being made is, I want to say next week. I'm not entirely sure about next week. And from then we will be able to hopefully have something concrete to say that's not just. I think it's tough at the moment.
Josh, my man.
So I got a question, because when the lockdown first started, I think, I'm not sure when it was, but there was a article from the leadership and ownership from the Scottish Rocks, or Glasgow Rocks, sorry, that they were very adamant to say that they should win the league because they were top when it finished. And I read that, and it kind of, in my mind, it was a little bit, I felt a little bit disappointed when I read that, to say, like, you know, there's a lot going on right now in the world in terms of, you know, safety is more important. But then I spoke to somebody, a very, very close friend of mine, who, you know, works in Glasgow, and he sort of saw the other side of it and said, well, you know, this is a franchise that's gone through a roller coaster history in terms of having a lot of ups and a lot of downs. And one thing the leadership has done there is, one, not only have they kept the club going, but they've built a very strong team with a majority of players actually being Scottish. So I just want to know, what are your thoughts in terms of the Scottish Rocks making it very public to say that, you know, they should be crowned champions if the league is to be cancelled?
I think obviously there's a lot of strong feeling there about it, and I think that they were perfectly entitled to put that out there and to say that that's what they wanted to happen. Obviously, it's you know, it's a decision that is difficult to make, and again, I know it's, you know, it's being talked about within all the possible scenarios that can fall out. Coming out publicly with it as they did, yeah, they're entitled to do that. It was, you know, they were stating their position, which is absolutely fine. I think that they should be, you know, proud of what they've built up there. They were having a really great season. I think there's, you know, clubs who were certainly getting up there in the mix as well. So yeah, I can understand why they put it out.
Yeah, it's tough because, you know, as I said first, when I first read the article, emotion, I think for everyone across the world, it was a very confusing and difficult time because, you know, we're going into the end game, the unknown. We don't know what's going on, of course. So when these emotions are playing and you read something like that, it's very easy to sort of make assumptions and to judge. But obviously, seeing the other side of it, I also see from the leadership's perspective that, you know what, well, we've invested a lot into this club. We've done a lot of hard work here. It's a very tough one. I'm having mixed feelings about it. Like I said, at one point I sort of raised one eyebrow, but the other point I say, well, you know what, I kind of get where you're coming from. You have done a lot of work there. Maybe you're entitled. But, you know, at the end of the day, there wasn't really that much in it at the end of the day. But wherever the league goes, we'll have to accept and, you know, move forward and go on with it.
Yeah, I'd say, like, I think what it did show, if nothing else, is their absolute passion and their commitment, which, you know, is undeniable there, which and has to be applauded, that they're you know, they're fighting their corner, like they're fighting for their team. They're really passionate about having that club in Glasgow. So I think from that point of view, that's, you know, that showed a positive. But yeah, we'll see what happens.
Absolutely, adds, my man.
Yeah, the one I want to come in with a slight positive, because obviously it's you know, the questions are all ifs, buts, maybes, and, you know, doom and gloom. But the one thing that has been brought out during this is there's been some really great content coming out from a lot of the podcasts. You know, there's obviously, as well as ourselves, everybody's been doing all sorts of great stuff to try and keep the spirit of the game going and keep people talking. In what ways do you think that we can carry that on when, you know, when we do get back to playing? You know, are you sort of wanting to sort of build up a relationship with the guys doing podcasts and with YouTube channels, and I guess sort of using the resources around the country? Because for yourself, for example, you can't be at every game every week with every team. So what's it looking like in future for working with some of the little independent media sources around the country to bring content on behalf of the league?
Absolutely. I mean, that's something that I really want to encourage. I mean, I put a tweet out a couple of weeks ago, just basically showing my appreciation for everything that everyone's been creating. Like, I'm reading it, I'm watching it, I'm listening to it, and I think that it just shows how passionate the basketball community is, which, coming in as like an outsider, I didn't really understand quite how passionate everyone was, and it's been incredible. I've had so many great conversations over the past few weeks with people, talking ideas, developing ideas, you know, just getting those conversations started. Because for me, you know, the league belongs to is owned by the clubs, and the clubs belong to their fans. You know, it's you can't exist without each other. And those fans that are making that content, absolutely, I want them to be involved. I think that there's so much talent out there that, yeah, absolutely, let's drive it forward. I think there would be some natural drop off in terms of how many, like, podcasts, etc., survive as we kind of get back to normal life and people have, you know, less time to work on these things. But definitely, I want to work with people. I don't want people to think that you know, we're the league and we're going to do our thing and we're not interested in what anyone else is doing, because that's absolutely not the case. You know, I want to embrace that that passion and creativity, and because, as I said before, we're all working towards the same goal of, like, really elevating British basketball and making it, you know, shouting about it, because it's great, you know, so why not?
I've got a question kind of related to that, in terms of production of stuff and the media that's out there from Daz, who couldn't make it to the show today. He had meetings and things today, but he wanted to know if the league, the BBL, would look to produce an app of some kind with stats, because I know the website is pretty good. You got the live stats and everything. You can go on there. You can look through the league leaders and things. But is there any plans to develop an app along the same kind of lines?
There have been sort of historical discussions about it. It's definitely something that I would be interested in looking at in the future. There's a few other things that I want to. It would have to be it'd have to be done right, and it would have to be done for the right reasons, not just we need an app and so let's just check one out. I'd want it to be really useful and what people want. But yeah, as I say, there's been historical discussions before that haven't really gone anywhere, but it's something that would definitely be on the path over the next couple of years.
Josh, my man.
So one thing the change that the BBL went through this season, I think they went from being hosted on livebasketball.tv to now they pretty much stream all the games on YouTube for free. I think that's a very, very big step, because one thing, it's identified that, it can get a lot of viewership. But one thing I don't know if it's possibly been discussed is, if you look at all the big leagues in Europe, one thing they do for all their domestic games is, the average attention span on YouTube, I think, is on average 1 minute 30 seconds. And I don't know if the BBL's looked into it, but you have all these games on YouTube, which is brilliant. But have they thought about, after every game, and I guess it's down to the club's media teams to do this, to really make those 3 to 4 minute highlight reels of those games, so that fans that didn't get to watch them can sort of catch like these spectacular moments. I know that Bristol Flyers do; they've got a very good media team. But is that something that's been looked in as well?
It's definitely something that I've highlighted as an area that I want to look at and see how we can develop that. As I say, I've got a very small team centrally, and sort of capacity differs from club to club. But if it's something that we can make work, then yeah, definitely. Because as you say, it's all very well having the time to sit down and watch a full match sometimes, but we know that sort of even now when we're in lockdown, I'm still struggling to watch all of the things that I want to watch and listen to all the things that I want to listen to, and having those little snappy highlights and everything would be great, and especially when we get back to normal life, whatever that looks like. Yeah, it's definitely something that I want to explore, and the sooner we can do it, the better, I think.
We have got someone else. I was just going to say, we've got someone on our YouTube channel. We've got some condensed games, and it's not a quick process at all. Surprisingly difficult.
Yeah, I think this is the thing as well. I think hopefully what might come out of all of this, where people have been creating their own stuff, is that they understand the level of work that goes into creating content. I think historically people have just been like, oh yeah, you just check something out and it's there, and it's like, no. And especially with editing as well. So I started out way back when in radio journalism, and this was my first experience in radio journalism was back in the mid-90s, when everything was still on tape, and you had to slice your tape with a razor blade and literally stick it back together. I'm giving away my age a bit here, but yeah, and so that was a long process. And yeah, digital has helped. You're not carrying razor blades around in your bag anymore, but it's still a long process. You've still got to catch exactly the right moments, and make sure that frame is exactly spot on, because I mean, for most people, I know that I certainly notice it. If something's edited and it's slightly out, I'm going to notice it, and that's all I'm going to see, because that's kind of how I am. But yeah, it does take time, and it does take skill. So that's why I want to make sure that when we do it right, because I want to put the best product out there that we can.
that kind of ties in a bit with what we were saying before, because obviously clubs have got their own social media teams and teams of people that do content and whatnot. But kind of one thing that I'd like to see going forward, and I know the guys will agree, is that you have that kind of, it's like more of an independent presence. So using the resources around the country, like you've got Josh and Darren down around London, you've got Pablo down in Plymouth, myself, and there's another kid called Marcel up here that do great content for the Giants. It'd be nice to actually, and it kind of eases up the burden on everyone, because the more content the better, would be to sort of go down there and report on the game from more of an independent standpoint. That's kind of where I was going with linking up with, you know, the podcast groups and the fan pages and whatnot. Yeah,
and I think that's definitely an option. And I think because, and in a way that works really well in terms of, so I'll keep going back to journalism because that's my background. So where you've got regional and local news teams, the relationships they develop and the knowledge that they have on their particular areas is second to none. It's incredible, and that shows through in the stories. And what I think has been lacking previously, perhaps, is that storytelling. You know, there's great stories that happen in the game. There's great stories surrounding the players. There's great stories surrounding fans. So it's how we can work together to bring those out, because that's what's going to interest, you know, other sports fans who, you know, might have considered basketball but don't think they really know anything about it. I think you can look at how successful The Last Dance has been, for example. It's a great story. It could have been on any subject at all. It's a great story. And I think by us all sharing those stories as much as we can, then I think that's how we help grow the interest.
Pabz, my man, far away.
Yeah, I mean, the other little rumour that's been sort of going around, that we've discussed it, is the possibility of new teams entering the BBL. Obviously, this is the worst time possible for a franchise to be trying to set up and enter the league. I've always thought that the BBL's maybe 3 or 4 teams short of being a stronger presence in the game in general. Is there much going on that you can talk about in terms of expanding and new teams potentially entering, not necessarily this year, but going forward?
Nothing in particular. As you say, there's always rumours. There's always stuff flying around, and there's always interest. You know, there'll always be people who come in and say, "Oh yeah, I want to start a franchise," but then nothing comes of it. I agree. I think that, you know, we would benefit from having a few more teams. Just to make it more, I think it would help make it more competitive, I think. But yeah, nothing solid as yet. They're all just rumours in the ether.
Yeah, we're hearing stuff about kind of the northeast, but one area of the country which I think we'd all agree is crying out for a franchise would be around the Birmingham area, because that's always, especially in the 90s and the early noughties, there was such a power force in the BBL. It'd certainly be great to see them at some point re-emerge. I just think a league with maybe 16 teams rather than 10 or 11, just it opens it up to more fans to go and check out the game, makes the league a bit more competitive. And then there's always the possibility of doing the old style, splitting it into 2 conferences, North and South. I just think that when the time's right, it'd be interesting to see if anybody does emerge, because I know what you're saying, that people probably show interest all the time, but as we saw sadly with London last season, it's not an easy job setting up a franchise.
It's not,
especially in a new town, or, you know, I think we touched on it before as well. There was a lot of nostalgia based around London City Royals, with it being at Crystal Palace. So if a team was to come back to Birmingham, it would have to be not necessarily off the back of the past success with the Bullets and whatnot. So I hope that's the way it goes.
Yeah, and as I say, sort of like, you know, the ambition of the league is there to grow. Certainly, I wouldn't have, you know, that's part of why I joined because of that ambition, and I think that is the case as well. That sort of, you know, if you're a basketball fan in Birmingham and you know you used to have a team that you could go and see, and now you're kind of like, right, well, my nearest team's either Leicester or Wolves, and it's just kind of like, well, they're not really a home team, and there's a lot to be said for having that that home team feel and that connection there. So yeah, if it happens, fantastic. I'd look forward to it, but yeah, nothing concrete as yet.
Well, that's really hope so.
If more came in, it's not a case of the league. I mean, there's been 12 teams now for as long as I can remember, you know, to a certain degree. It's not a case of the BBL only wants 12 teams. Would it take on more?
As far as I know, I've not been told any different. But yeah, I think it's just, as you say, like as you mentioned, Pabz, it's hard to set up a team and set up a franchise. And I think again, right, as we're saying, sometimes people might underestimate the amount of work that does go into it. You know, all of the teams at the moment, they all work so incredibly hard to make sure that, you know, that happening and stuff happens. So I guess we'll wait and see.
Josh, my man.
Selina, one thing I want to know is, you know, if we go back to, let's go back to the 80s when my dad was playing in what was then known as the British Basketball League, and even post 1987 or pre 1987, they were, I think, Adam, was it on Channel 4? It was on being showcased? Yeah.
It was on 4 to begin with before it moved over to Sky.
Sky. So my first memory of BBL on TV would be Sky. There's Playmaker on YouTube right now. That's Martin Godfrey. He played for London Towers. He played for my dad as well at Thames Valley Tigers. And he's uploaded all these old school games that were hosted on Sky. Obviously, the BBL decided to go with a different direction. I think it was in 2003 or 4. I can't remember. And then the Sky deal was done and the NTL deal folded. But how do right now, what is the process right now in terms of trying to move forward and approach these sort of platforms and say, look, this is the product we've got. The product is slowly improving. What do we have to do to get back on those platforms to really help the game become a commercialized sport?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think over sort of right since that time, there's been such a shift in broadcasting terms. I think there's been so much change in terms of what broadcasters and in terms of what risk they're willing to take on, because, you know, back then, you know, you could be like, yeah, okay, we'll take a punt, we'll show you games and see what happens. But now there's such a pressure on them to deliver commercial success that I think there's less risk taking going on. And it might be that we see that changes. It might be that we see that, you know, with everything that's happened, you know, suddenly broadcasters are left with nothing. And it's been a real, I think for some of them, it might have been a bit of a wake-up call. It forced them to go out and look at other sports. I know that certainly towards the end of the season, I was getting a lot more interest from sort of press inquiries than I would have done before, or I would have been expecting before. So I think hopefully there'll be a bit of a shift in thinking in terms of, right, okay, there's other sports out there, you know, it's not just football, it's not just well, even rugby suffered a bit, but, you know, we're up competing against sort of really established TV sports, which I think there'll be an attitudinal shift. I think there will be, but I think it will take time. You know, my personal view is that, you know, we're there. We've got a product. It is getting better. it is getting to a standard that we can, you know, we want to showcase. So we'll see what happens. But I think it will take an attitudinal shift from broadcasters mainly.
I mean, we're at a disadvantage compared to the likes of football. The Premier League is probably one of the most watched leagues in the world. It's not only broadcasted here in the UK. Sky probably gets, or BBC, whatever, ITV Sport, whatever it's on. They get those viewerships all around the world. Cricket, look at that. That's a sport that's watched in Australia, New Zealand, parts of Asia as well. The same with rugby. So we've got a product that's predominantly going to be watched by people within the United Kingdom. So I guess the way we innovate around that is the London City Royals tried that when they signed the Lavrinovic twins. That got a little bit of notice from local Lithuanian fans. And maybe that's one way to go, that we try and get these players from international communities where basketball is a hotbed. They could get more. That's a long, long process. But maybe it's a case of going to these platforms that maybe not as big as Sky, not as big as, I guess, ESPN, but try and sort of build the platform slowly, because it really is a marathon and not a sprint after all.
It is. And I think that there's, I think what people need to recognise is, as you say, it's a long-term process. It's not like, there's no magic quick fix for it. And for me, it's about building those relationships, you know, working out those platforms. Who's going to be the best fit? Because it's got to be the best fit for us on so many different levels. So it's like, who are those best people for us? And yeah, just building those relationships and seeing what happens. But yeah, it's not a magic overnight. We're suddenly going to say, oh yeah, we're broadcasting all over the place. It's a definite longer term thing.
Last season, I think it was last season, 18-19 season. The BBL broadcasted, I think it was at least a game of the week on Free Sports, which I was quite impressed with the way that they, you know, the production of it. They had a courtside commentator. They had somebody to interview players. They kind of did all the bits and pieces that you would see on, say, an NBA game. There wasn't, you know, they had the action replays and all that kind of stuff. Is that something that the BBL would look to do again? Not necessarily with Free Sports, the channel itself, but is that something that that is on the horizon?
Yeah, I mean, ideally that'd be something that I'd like to see happen. As I say, I don't know when it would happen, but yeah, definitely stuff like that is what I want to see happen. And that's, for me, that's part of the growth and building that up, in terms of, you know, if we can show that yes, there's an audience for it, that unlocks bigger platforms, bigger spaces there. I don't know the background and the history on the Free Sports thing at the moment, but I don't see why it wouldn't be something that we would look to do in the future.
I think that sometimes people, fans especially, get kind of hung up on why isn't it on Sky Sport. You know, they're kind of going for the big hitter straight away. And like you say, it's a progression thing. Now, the other sport that I see a lot of up close and personal is ice hockey. And what the EIHL do, the English Ice Hockey League, is I forget which channel it is. It's on one of the Freeview channels, but they have really good, I don't know if you've ever seen it, regular British ice hockey.
I think that used to be the Free Sport channel as well, yeah.
You know what? I'm not sure if it's actually called Free Sport. I'm going to look it up and I'll let you know which one it is. But the way it's presented is everything that we kind of need the British Basketball League to be presented. So sometimes shooting for the stars with Sky is great, but obviously it's just impossible.
Yeah.
Whereas now there's that many free channels knocking around on Freeview itself and even Sky channels. I think the way to do it would be to go to one of the smaller ones like the EIHL have done, and they've done a really good job in bringing content. And I think the other thing with it as well is every time I'm watching the hockey shows, I'm thinking, this is great, but then I like this sport. But if I wanted to go out and play it, it's completely inaccessible to a lot of people. Whereas if basketball was on there, that it's easy to go out and play some basketball from a participation level. And I know from experience that myself included, when my daughter suggested she might want to try ice hockey, after speaking to a friend who's really heavily involved, my buddy Mark, who's the GB photographer actually, and he told me just how much it is to play that sport in terms of the equipment and everything like that. Like wow. So do you think there's an opportunity to maybe try reaching out and linking up with other entities like the English Ice Hockey League? Because there used to be quite a lot of crossover, especially in Manchester, for example, between the Storm and the Giants that kind of work together. Do you think that, or have you ever tried doing it before, reaching across to another what's perceived as minority sport to see how they do what they do?
Yeah, I definitely think that is that's something that I really want to look into and work on. So I was brought in, specifically to look at these things and sort of over the the next few years sort of build all of that up. And there's a lot that different sports can learn from each other. So I'd say over the past few weeks I've been having conversations with people, not just in basketball, but across the world. And I've been speaking to people in the US, I've been speaking to people in Australia, just understanding and learning how they're working things, what's working for them. But definitely here as well, I think there's definitely work that we can do together. So with like ice hockey, with even sports that you think are big, so like cricket, county cricket is, everyone's kind of like bemoaning the slide of it at the moment. And so there's stuff there as well where I think there's a lot of natural crossover in terms of what we're looking to try and do. So yeah, I'm open to those conversations.
Yeah, I'd love to talk to you about that as a separate thing, because it's something I'm really kind of passionate about, is trying to interconnect the two sports, because all it's going to do is help one another out. I know that last season one of the Giants players, Delvin Dickinson, he got invited to a Storm game by one of the players who was a big basketball fan. He was over from Canada playing, and they made a real fuss over him. They had him present player of the game, gave him his own jersey and stuff like that. And when I saw that they'd done that, I was like, that's kind of what we need to do, have each other's backs a bit more. Yeah,
and I think that's something that can really, really work, where teams are working with the sports teams within their cities and their locations. I know I've seen it. So I live in Leicester, and in a previous job, the company I was working for worked with the riders. So I went to a few games there, and they've built up relationships with some of the Leicester City players, for example. And I think that the more that can happen sort of around all of the clubs, it's only beneficial, because if you're a fan of one sport, you're generally going to find something that you like about another sport. You never just exclusively into one sport, I don't think. You either get sports or you don't. It's so I think there's definitely a lot of crossover potential, definitely.
And I just think that the two games, hockey and basketball, with them being the sort of transatlantic games, they kind of are. Obviously, hockey's the national sport in Canada, but it's got a huge following in the States as well. And I can only speak it from a Manchester point of view, but there's plenty of people that I see at Giants and Storm games, and I know that they'd love it if both were working together. So let's hope so.
Yeah, I as I say, I don't see why it shouldn't or couldn't happen. So definitely encouraged. Pardon?
There's a guy called Niall Gray, who's the commentator for Surrey Scorchers.
Yes.
He's involved he's got a page called Hoops and Hockey. So he's someone probably that has contacts within the hockey world as well.
Yeah.
potentially?
Well, who knows? I'm sure he does.
Josh, my man, any more questions?
So you've been with the BBL now for a short time. I mean, it's actually quite an exciting time for you to be a part of, because we can honestly say from where the BBL was, I think, what are we now, 2020? Let's go 10 years ago. It was kind of like a membership crisis. And, you know, we talked about there being 12 teams, but it does look like this year was the most competitive year in the British Basketball League, because, you know, teams seemed quite stable in terms of self-sustainability. The league was quite evenly matched as well, in my perspective. What do you see for the future of this league from what you've seen so far in terms of its potential in being a commercial product?
I think the potential is absolutely there. I absolutely think it is. From everyone I've spoken to, right from sort of like club owners down to fans, like the drive and the desire is there to make it successful. I think that there's a real sense of collectively wanting to make that happen and wanting to like really push it forward. From what I've gathered, I should say, in a very short time I've been here, I think that might be something that could have been not necessarily lacking, but not as focused previously. But I think that now there's a sense of a real opportunity and a real chance to just really push things forward, really drive it on. As I say, that's part of why I was brought in. So my role was a new role created because all of the member clubs recognised that there was a need there. So I'm going to do everything I can to help make that happen.
Because I think it was back in 1996 or 7. When did Space Jam come out? Pabz, do you remember?
Just before he came back, so 94, 95-ish. Maybe 96, just after.
Okay, so that movie came out, and, you know, the saying is in the world of basketball that Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, they saved the game of basketball, because I think back then indoor hockey was going to get the big sponsorship for US because they thought that was going to be the sport of the future. But they saved the game, and Jordan more or less globalized the game. If I try and put into a small comparison for what we have here in the UK, you know, I've spoken to a lot of GMs in the BBL that have said, though, we are a sleeping giant. It's only a matter of time if we keep working the way we are that it's going to get bigger. But two things I felt personally that possibly could sort of speed things up is, you know, there are some very successful YouTube content makers out there that have millions of followers. One of them is, I don't know if you've heard of him, Christopher London. He's a YouTuber.
Not heard of him.
He has about 6 million followers on YouTube. He's American British. His father played in the BBL. His name is Mike Obaseki. Played for my dad. And I don't know if you've thought about this, but is it possible, do you think the BBL could try and reach out to these sort of YouTube phenomenons that, you know, have such a close link to the British game that, you know, could in some possible way assist in using their channels to maybe promote the game a little bit further? Because there's also another guy in Scotland, and I think he went to Obi Soko's opening game. He might have like 200,000 followers on YouTube. He went all the way to the Copper Box and to make some content on Obi's opening game, and it got something like 600,000 views on YouTube. Something like that, I just feel could just speed the process up, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. So influencer marketing is the technical term for it. Yeah. I think that there's, again, it's kind of on my map of things that I want us to be working on, and reaching out to people who aren't necessarily within the basketball community but have an interest. I think that there is quite a little bubble around the basketball community, which isn't a bad thing, but I think bringing in some like I should say, like influencers, creators from outside, definitely, because they're coming at it from the point of view of, you know, people who we want to, like, people who follow British basketball know about it. I want to reach the people who think they might like basketball, or you know, they'll watch an NBA game or something, but don't necessarily realize that they can do that live right here. They're the people that I want to be talking to and saying, look, hey, like you paid for your NBA pass, but you can go and watch a game live, and it's you know, it's great quality. So yeah, it's definitely on my plan. There's already some people that I've been talking to, people that I've identified that I would love to work with. So yeah, getting those conversations starting and happening is definitely the way forward.
That's a really great point what you made there, Selina, because I think if anything, whilst all this has been going on, I think The Last Dance is going to be a lot more important than we think about regenerating interest in this game, because I'm seeing a lot of stuff at the moment going around social media about all the fair weathers that are now buying Jordan jerseys and stuff like that. And the way I look at it is there's a couple of ways. It's amazing because the documentary was that good that people that have never even watched the NBA before are saying, "Oh my God, what an incredible documentary that is! Amazing." Know nothing about basketball, but I kind of want to get into the game. So I think The Last Dance is going to be more important than we think. I think it's
absolutely. I think so. From sort of like my personal Twitter timelines, for example. So a friend of mine has been watching it. She's never really watched basketball before, never really been interested, and she's been absolutely blown away by it. Like, she was like, I didn't realize how athletic the players are. I didn't realize how, you know, how fast the game is. Didn't realize how much went into it. And her kids pestered her for a hoop. So you know, it's hooked her kids as well. Yeah. And so now when we get back to playing, she's definitely coming along. She's definitely bringing her kids along to games. And that's kind of the power of it. And I think sort of the gatekeeping around some stuff with, you know, with regards to, oh, these people can't possibly be interested because they don't know every single stat. It's like, just, you know, be happy that people are enjoying something, you know, be happy that people are interested in something that you're interested. Just because they might not have the knowledge or they've not been liking it as long as you have, doesn't invalidate their experience or their enjoyment of it.
And that's always been the problem with the perception of the BBL, I think.
Yeah, Pabz, you beat me to it. I was going to say that is kind of, I mean, we started a bit of thing on Twitter, and the disclaimer I'm going to give is that anything that we talk about, we talk about it from the perspective is we want to create discussion. It's not like we're trying to say what we say is right because we've been around the game for X amount of years. When I saw the Twitter blowing up after we did the first show, I was like, well, brilliant, because people are now talking about the game. It's not personal. No one's ever going to agree on everything because it's sports. Yeah. And that's 9 cents of the law when you know, trying to do what we're doing. It's to invoke discussion and get people talking about it. So, you know, if The Last Dance is what makes British basketball make a big comeback, then brilliant, because you know, you're saying there you've got 2 people that are automatically going to start coming and watching the game just from watching that. I think there's going to be a lot of people that do that. And
I think so too. And I think, I think people need to remember as well that they were a new fan once.
Sure.
You're not born being a fan. So I think,
well,
well, apart from you, I mean, but you could have like completely rebelled and you know, gone, you know.
I wanted to be a squash fan, you know.
you could have been. You just didn't rebel enough.
I got sent to my room one night for not playing basketball. That's how bad it was.
But I think apart from Josh, that most people are not born fans. So everyone was a new fan at one point, and you see it in all fandoms. It's not just basketball. You see it everywhere. But I think that the more welcoming people are, the better, because that's how it's going to grow. And you know, if you say that you love British basketball, welcome people into it. You know,
this bubble that we're trying to burst a little bit is the fact that people can be so precious about the game that sort of trying to infiltrate it is kind of made difficult. You know, we won't do what we do sometimes and name names with kind of online places that they kind of do that. Let's stop laughing, Pablo. But you know, it's what it's all about. You know, welcoming people in rather than going, well, actually, this is a small sport and we want to keep it that way, and it's our sport or it's our club. It's not how it works. If we want to grow the game, we've got to embrace it. So, if I may, Pabz, I want to actually, I wrote down the same question for Selina that Darren sent us to ask. And it seems like a good segue to do that. In the academy system within the BBL clubs, what's kind of happening with that at the moment? Because it's a bit of a strange one up here in Manchester, because the best academy in the city is obviously the Manchester Magic and Mystics, which don't really have ties to the Manchester Giants. And yet they're one of the best academies in the country. What is the sort of plan for the academy system? Because as far as I'm aware, to have a BBL team, you've got to have an academy attached to it as well. And certainly the Manchester Giants Academy, it doesn't really exist in that way right now. It's kind of a separate entity. So, you know, where are we at with the academy systems?
Honestly, I don't know. I don't, I don't know. I don't have the knowledge on that at the moment. Personally speaking, yeah, absolutely. Academies and creating that pathway for people is I think is key. I had a call yesterday with a few people from WBBL, and we were talking about that education and you know, educating people on how basketball can help you in so many different areas. It's not just playing sport. There's so many different opportunities with it. So yeah, for the academies, for the league, don't know. But personally, I think it's really important. That community element as well, I think, is absolutely key. Absolutely. It's something that I'm really passionate about anyway. And I think that we'll see, I think following on from everything that's going on now, I think we'll see a lot more of it, to be honest.
We've got about 5 minutes left. To just kind of lead into that as well, you're saying about a pathway. Obviously, the academy's building up the youngsters, and essentially with the new rule changes in terms of personnel and players you can have on a team, now that it could essentially lead to something more. So players will no longer have to go further afield to get European competition, because now we can have the extra American. The rules come more into line with European teams. How did that rule change come about? How does something like that come about?
Honestly, I don't know. I was not involved in those discussions, so I can't give you an answer on that, I'm afraid.
But moving forwards, it's definitely a positive thing. Or is it definitely a positive thing? Is that how it's viewed?
I think so. I think the sort of the reasoning behind it was obviously with Brexit coming up, you know, because that hasn't gone away. There was definitely seen to be a need to sort of make sure that the balance was still there. So obviously, you know, supporting and promoting British players, but making sure that the right kind of balance was there and available for teams.
Well, we haven't got long left, fellas. Have you got any quick fire questions to get in there?
I just want to thank you for coming on, Selina. It's great to have someone from the league come on and have these discussions. So my heart goes out to you for the amount of crazy questions that you'll be getting asked at the moment. And
well, you've had asked in the last half an hour.
Or in the last half an hour, indeed, yeah. Yeah, so good luck with it, and I hope it all. I just hope we get back to it soon, but when we can.
When we can safely, same. I'm excited to get back to it. I'm excited to see what happens, and yeah, I'm excited about the journey that we're going to go on because yeah, I think it's going to be great.
Sure.
That's my man.
You'll be seeing us three a lot more in the future.
Excellent, good.
Make sure nobody bans us from getting in, all right?
I'll be circulating your images around to everyone. Like, no, I won't.
As long as he hasn't been to West Ham first.
Wait, settle that. Let's not get carried away, all right?
Well, thank you very much, Selina.
Thank
Fellas,
you.
thank you as well. We'll be back at some point to watch this space. But yeah, thanks very much for coming on and sharing with us.
No worries. Thanks, guys.